everyone, this is Mrs. Palomo. The book I chose to read to you guys today is Gathering Blue by Lowry. The reason I picked this book is because if you have read Number the Stars before, you've already read one of her books and you might be interested in seeing another one of her pieces. Another book that she wrote that many of you probably know is The Giver. And what's really interesting about The Giver and Gathering Blue is it's a companion book. So it goes with The Giver really well. The Giver is about a society that has technology and has everything established and is kind of a controversy between dystopia or utopia. And Gathering Blue is very similar, except the technology is removed and it's a society without it. So if you really liked The Giver, I think you'll like Gathering Blue as well, because it's kind of a part two to it, but without being directly connected. It's just a different type of society. So in this chapter, in chapter 1, you're going to meet the main character, Kira. She has a deformed leg, and in her society, this is something that if you had a child that had a disability, they would have been disposed of, but her mother has fought to keep her. But now her mother has passed away, and that's where this story is going to kick off. We're going to learn a little bit of her backstory as we read chapter 1. So I hope you like it, and let's go ahead and get started. Mother? There was no reply. She hadn't expected one. Her mother had been dead now for 4 days, and Kira could tell that the last of the spirit was drifting away. Mother, she said it again, quietly, to whatever was leaving. She thought that she could feel it leaving, the way one could feel a small whisper of breeze at night. Now she was alone. Kira felt the aloneness, the uncertainty, the great sadness. This had been her mother, the warm and vital woman whose name had been Karina. Then, after the brief, unexpected sickness, it had become the body of Karina, still containing the lingering spirit. After 4 sunsets and sunrises, the spirit, too, was gone. It was simply a body. Diggers would come and sprinkle a layer of soil over the flesh, but even so, it would be eaten by the crawling, hungry creatures that came at night. Then the bones would be scattered, rot, and crumbled to become part of the earth. Kira wiped briefly at her eyes, which had been filled suddenly with tears. She had loved her mother and would miss her terribly, but it was time for her to go. She wedged her walking stick into the soft ground, leaning on it, and pulled herself up. She looked around uncertainly. She was young still, and had not expected death before. Not in the small 2-person family that she and her mother had been. Of course, she had seen others go through the ritual. She could see some of them in the vast, foul-smelling fields of leaving, huddled beside one who was lingering spirits they tended. She knew that a woman named Helen was there, watching the spirit leave her infant, who had been born too soon. Helen had come to the field only the day before. Infants did not require the 4 days of watching. The wisp of their spirits barely arrived, drifted away quickly. So Helen would return to the village, then her mother's family. As for Kira, she had no family now. Not any home. The cot she had shared with her mother had been burned. This was always done after the sickness. The small structure, the only home Kira had ever known, was gone. She had seen the smoke in the distance as she sat with the body. As she watched the spirit of her mother drift away, she had seen the cindered fragments of her childhood life whirl into the sky as well. She felt a small shudder of fear. Fear was always part of life for the people. Because of the fear, they made shelter and found food and grew things. For the same reason, weapons were stored, waiting. There were fear of cold, of sickness, and hunger. There was fear of beast. The fear propelled her now, and she stood, leaning on her stick. She looked down at a last time of the lifeless body that had once contained her mother, and considered where to go. Kira thought about rebuilding. If she could find help, though, help would be unlikely. It wouldn't take long to build a cot. especially not this time of year. Summer start, when tree limbs were supple and mud was thick and abundant beside the river. She had often watched others building, and Kira realized that she could probably construct some sort of shelter for herself. Its corners and chimney might not be straight. The roof would be difficult. Her bad leg might make it impossible for her to climb. But she would find a way. Somehow she would build a cot. Then she could find a way to make a life. Her mother's brother had been near her in the field for 2 days, not guarding Katrina, his sister, but sitting slightly beside the body of his own woman, the short-tempered Solora, and that of their own infant who had been too young to have a name. They had nodded to each other, Kira, her mother's brother, in acknowledgement, but he had departed, his time in the field of leaving finished. He had tykes to tend. He and Slora had two others in addition to the one that had brought upon her death. The others were still small, their names yet one syllable, Dan and Mar. Perhaps I could care for them, Kira thought briefly, trying to find her own future within the village. But even as the thought flickered into her, she knew it would not be permitted. Solar's tykes could be given away, distributed to those who had none. Healthy, strong tykes were valuable. Properly trained, they could contribute to a family's needs and could be greatly desired. No one would desire Kira. No one had ever, except her mother. Often, Katrina had told Kira the story of her birth, the birth of a fatherless girl with a twisted leg, and how her mother had fought to keep her alive. They came to take you, Katrina said, whispering the story in the evening in the cot, with the fire fed and glowing. You were 1 day old, not yet named, your only syllable infant name, Kir. Yes, that's right, Kir. They brought me food and were going to take you away to the field. Kira shuddered. It was the way, the custom. It was the merciful thing to do, to give an unnamed, imperfect infant back to the earth before its spirit had filled it and made it human. But it made her shudder. Katrina stroked her daughter's hair. They meant no harm, she reminded her. Kira nodded. They didn't know it was me. It wasn't you yet. Tell me again why you told them no, Karina whispered. Her mother sighed, remembering. I knew I would not have another child, she pointed out. Your father had been taken by beast. It had been several months since he went off to hunt and did not return, and so I would not give birth again. Oh, she added, perhaps they would have given me one eventually, an orphan to raise. But as I held you even then, with your spirit not yet arrived, and with your leg bent wrong, so that it was clear you would never run, even then your eyes were bright. I could see the beginning of something remarkable in your eyes, and your fingers were long and well shaped. And strong. My hands were strong, Rena added with a satisfaction. She had heard the story so often, each time of hearing she looked down at her strong hands with pride. Her mother laughed. So strong they gripped my thumb so fiercely I would not let go. Feeling the fierce tug of my thumb, I could not let them take you away. I simply told them no. They were angry. Yes, but I was firm. And of course your father was still alive. He was old then, 4 syllables, and he had been the leader of the people, the chief guardian for a long time. They respected him, and your father would have been greatly respected leader too, had he not died on the long hunt. He had already been chosen to be a guardian. Say my father's name to me, Gran begged. Her mother smiled in the firelight. Christopher, she said. You know that. I like to hear it, though. I like to hear you say it. Do you want me to go on? Kira nodded. You were firm. You insisted, she reminded her mother. Still, they made me promise that you would not become a burden. I haven't, had I? Of course not. Your strong hands and wise head make up for your crippled leg. You are sturdy and reliable helper in weaving in the shed, In the weaving shed, all the women who work there say so. One bent leg is of no importance when measured against your cleverness. The stories you tell to the tykes, the pictures you create with your words, and with your thread. The threading you do, it is unlike any threading the people have ever seen. Far beyond anything I could do. Her mother stopped. She laughed. Enough. You mustn't tease me into flattering. Don't forget, you are still a girl, and often willful. And just this morning, Kira, you forgot to tidy the cot, even though you had promised. I won't forget tomorrow, Kira said sleepily, snuggling against her mother. On the raised sleeping mat, she pushed her twisted leg into a more comfortable position for the night. I promise. That's part 1 of chapter 1. We'll continue to part 2 on the next video. Thanks, guys.